Hello, fabulous third graders. Today we are going to talk about how we order numbers. The third graders at First Street School are putting on a class play. On which day were the greatest number of tickets sold? Let's take a look at the 3-day sales. On Friday, 207 tickets were sold. On Saturday, 223 tickets were sold. And on Sunday, 196 tickets were sold. So we can compare and order these numbers to find which is the greatest number. To do that, we can use a place value chart just like we did when we compared numbers. We can place 207 into our chart, as well as 223 and 196. Now, just like we did when we compared, we're going to start with the greatest place. In this case, it's the hundreds. So we're going to look at the digits that make up the hundreds. We have 2, and we have 1. Well, right away we can see that the 1 is the least amount. So we can automatically say that 196 will be the least number of tickets sold. So we can already mark that as our third number in the case of greatest to least. So that means now we have our 207 and 223 that both start with 2 in the greatest place, in the hundreds place. So now, just like before when we compared numbers, we have to now go to the next place, which is the tens place. Now we're not going to look at the 9 because we already know that 196 is the least number. So now we have 0 and 2. Now we have to figure out which of those two is the greater number. That's right, it's the 2. And because of that, 223 is going to be our greatest number, followed by 207, and then last with 196. So after we have done all of this comparing, we can now say that the greatest number of tickets were sold on Saturday. We always have to be careful when reading the directions for ordering numbers. For example, this problem says to write the numbers in order from least to greatest. So we have to make sure that the first number we place is the least number and the last number we place is the greatest number out of these numbers: 2,894, 3,175, and 3,157. So remember, a way that we can compare and order these numbers is to place them into a place value chart. So let's go ahead and put these numbers into our place value chart. Now when we compare numbers, remember we always start with the greatest place. In this case, it's the thousands. So we look at the 2 and the 3 and the 3. And automatically we can see that 2 is the least number in these 3 digits. So that means that 2,894 is going to be our least number. So now that one is out of the way, we have to figure out what order the next 2 numbers come in. So we have to go to the hundreds column and compare the digits in those 2 numbers only. We don't have to compare the 8 because that's part of 2,894, which we already know is our least number. Now here we see that 1 is equal to 1. So now we have to move on to the next column, which is our tens column, and compare the numbers 7 and 5. Well, between 7 and 5, 5 is less than 7, which means that 3,175 is going to be our greatest number. So that means that 3,157 will be the number in between. So after we use our chart to compare, we can order our numbers now and say that the order from least to greatest is 2,894, 3,157, and 3,175. Remember to write your numbers far apart from one another so it doesn't look like one giant number. Let's do some problems on Reteach 2.2 together before you try some on your own. The directions here say to write the numbers in order from greatest to least. Now, I like to highlight the greatest and least in my sentence so that I can always remember which order I'm putting my numbers in case the directions change. So, number 1 wants us to put 25, 17, and 23 from greatest to least. So I'm going to use my place value chart and place the numbers into the correct columns. Now in this case, I'm only using the tens and the ones because we have 3 two-digit numbers. So I'm going to compare starting from the greatest place. In this case, it's the tens. And the first thing I notice is that 1 is the least number. So automatically I know that 17 is going to be the least number, which means I still have to go and compare in the next column for those remaining numbers 25 and 23. So I need to look at the 5 and I need to look at the 3. Now 3 is the least of those two, which means that the 5 is the greatest, so 25 is going to be my greatest number. So now after comparing on the chart, I can say that the order from greatest to least is 25, 23, and 17. Let's try another one from Reteach 2.2 with the same directions to write the numbers in order from greatest to least. Let's look at number 5 with the numbers 512, 346, and 371. Here's my place value chart, and I'll place these three numbers into the place value chart using the hundreds, tens, and ones because these are three-digit numbers. So to compare, I'm going to start in the greatest place, which in this case is the hundreds. And I can see that the 5 is a different digit than the 3 and the 3. And I know that 5 is greater than 3, so 5 is the greatest number here. That means that 512 is going to be my greatest number. So now I need to compare 346 and 371 starting in the next column, the tens. So when I move over here, I see a 4 and I see a 7. Now I see that 7 is the greater of the two. 4 is less than 7. 7 is greater than 4. So because 4 is less than 7, I know that out of all three of these numbers, 346 is going to be my least number. So after using my chart to compare these numbers, we can now say that the order from greatest to least is 512, 371, and 346. Here is one more we will do from Reteach 2.2 before you try some on your own. The same directions to write the numbers in order from greatest to least we are going to apply to number 9, 893, 1026, and 914. So just as before, we're going to place these numbers into a place value chart. 893, 1026, and 914. Don't forget to put the digits in the correct columns. So just as before, I'm going to compare these numbers before I order them, and I'm going to start with the greatest place. In this case, it's the thousands, but the only number that has a digit in the thousands is 1026. The 893 and the 914 do not have any thousands, so we look at that as 0. So right away we can see that 1026 is going to be our greatest number. So that means we now have to compare 893 and 914 to figure out which one of those comes next. So let's take a look at the hundreds column, at the 8 and at the 9. Well, the greatest of those two digits is the 9, so that means that 8 is less than 9, which means that has to be the least number. And that means the 914 will be the number in the middle. So after using our chart to compare these numbers, we can say that the order from greatest to least is 1026, 914, and 893. Now you're going to try some all by yourself.